Don't worry, we are friends.
All right, so welcome to our first panel of the day. We are being joined by Jonathan from Levana, Stephen from the DeFi Dojo, and Danny, who is also with DeFi Dojo Validation. Maybe just go ahead and give a quick introduction to yourselves.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Karras. I lead communications at Levana. Levana is a Cosmos-based perpetual swap, which allows for 30x leverage, long and short, on all of your favorite Cosmos assets. We're currently live on Osmosis, Injective, and Say.
Hi, I'm Steven, also sometimes known as the Calculator Guy. I am the founder of DeFi Dojo Discord, also one of the co-founders of DeFi Dojo Validation, and one of the co-founders of Define Logic Labs, which is a data science firm that works with Sommelier and Quasar to do data science for their vaults.
Hey, I'm Danny. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DeFi Dojo Validation, as well as a Cosmos Maxi and IBC Maxi and degenerate trader.
All right, great. So in our panel, we are trying to establish a very honest review of the last 12 months of Cosmos DeFi. Gonna look at some strategies that are juicy right now, and also finish off with taking a look to the road ahead. So maybe let's start off with maybe just looking at where we've been last Cosmoverse, last September in Medellin, Colombia. How did the DeFi landscape in Cosmos evolve since then? And I think we can all agree that back then there were we were severely lacking behind some other ecosystems. But I think by now we have caught up here and there, probably not everywhere. But where do you think we've seen the greatest improvements? And what's your take on the status quo?
Sure. I think we can pass it around. Yeah. So I think that we have seen, if you look at the history of Cosmos, it was really the first, I'd say, wide-scale successful example of delegated proof of stake. And we have no shortage of validator operators to attest to that. That the necessity of innovation, which was found in other networks, primarily in order to be able to create sustainable yield through building financial services, is not needed within Cosmos, because throughout the majority of Cosmos's history, we have had significantly large yield. And it's not yield that falls under the hyperinflation to be able to just cannibalize or really kill the network, but it's a double-digit yield, which satiates most of the community members, to the point where why would I want to participate in a platform that has more exotic financial services when I could just stake Atom, or I could just put Osmo into a superfluid pool and get trading fees and distribution or subsidized yield. So I think that now, over the past year, while we've seen that a lot of those yields have significantly decreased, that it's allowed for products, and I can only speak for the Levana team, but it's allowed for products like Levana to have an opportunity to come to market, because now we can focus on real yield. We can take traders' fees and then pay them to depositors, and then that are providing liquidity to generate the borrowed capital, which generates the leverage, and then, because we're not competing with 40% APR on things like Juno and other chains, the yield that we generate actually has product market fit. And I think that especially now with the adoption of liquid stake derivatives, which are very prevalent now, really only for the past few weeks within Cosmos, at a significant market share. I mean, they've always existed, but now they can actually flourish. So I think that we will see a renaissance or an emergence within Cosmos where more exotic, where entrepreneurs can actually create creative ways to generate yields without having to compete with being able to supplement the risk-free reward found within Cosmos as opposed to compete with it.
Absolutely. And on top of that, he was talking about the desire and interest to have like double-digit yield on things like Atom, Osmo, Juno, whatever it is, and even stablecoins, and yet has a protocol that gives you triple-digit yields on those same assets. Right now, I think if you were shorting Injective on what is it, Neutron?
On Injective.
On Injective. Oh yeah, thank you. It's like 400% to short, and this was like I checked half an hour ago, kind of excitedly, almost wanted to move some assets. So the yield landscape, if we look at it, the primary things that people want to do with their assets traditionally had been provide liquidity, which has massive exposure to impermanent loss, so you need high returns to overcome that, then lend or borrow on money markets, which means you need deep liquidity in money markets to have those be effective, and then stake. And everyone's familiar with staking. It's one of the largest operations done in IBC. But now we also have vaults. So whether it be Quasar vaults, where you have fascinating strategies being run behind the scenes that you can participate in, or CPVs, which is what I call counterparty vaults, where you can participate in providing liquidity for traders and get a single-sided yield. We're opening this yield landscape in fascinating ways in IBC, and I think that's really where we're going to see growth. Because as a strategist, I care primarily about number go up, and number go up not in the traditional sense as I want my asset to go up in value. I'm not a good trader, but I want my yield to go up. I want my principal to go up, and having access to things like delta neutral strategies where I can mitigate my risk of my exposure to the markets while still maintaining some sort of reasonable yield is, to me, a really fascinating way and to get yield and attractive to people who might not have let's say, any understanding of the narratives that drive markets one way or another.
That was great. I think from like a narrative standpoint and talking about the evolution of Cosmos DeFi over the last year, we saw everything go from just like the standard AMMs that you saw popping up everywhere. And then I think the Cosmos community as they like experienced all this impermanent loss and all these different things that like came with the bear market, you saw a lot of the Cosmos community exit DeFi and just say like, I want to stake. That's good enough for me, and that's the safest thing to do. But I think the old funny thing was that Ethereum would come to Cosmos and get good ideas and then build them in Ethereum, and then they would be wildly successful. Well, I think in Cosmos DeFi, we're seeing the exact opposite of that. We're seeing really good ideas like GMX and Yearn and all these different financial products that are now finally coming to Cosmos. And I think it's up to us to get the Cosmos community re-excited and re-understanding this different version of DeFi that isn't just a Cosmos AMM or another AMM popping up somewhere else.
But do you think that that's going to be sufficient to keep the ecosystem thriving and growing in the long run? Because right now the status quo is, okay, now we've caught up to Ethereum in terms of the actual applications we can use, but is there anything in the current landscape that really is something novel that truly excites you, where you think, okay, now we are also going to get people who previously were only dabbling in some other ecosystems excited about Cosmos and get some new capital and new users flowing in?
This is a great question. There's a lot of infrastructure that still needs to be built to make IBC painless. Like right now, swapping on some of the major dexes in IBC is incredibly painful. The slippage and price impact makes these things non-viable for like whales or even dolphins who want to come in here and actively trade. So they become reliant on things like perp dexes, which is fine, to do any sort of like directional betting. I think we need deeper liquidity, and how you get that is generally through incentives. So it's a chicken and egg problem where we need the incentives to drive the liquidity, but the incentives tend to disproportionately harm the governance tokens in IBC. So how do you incentive align? I think concentrated liquidity is one of the ways to get there. Because with concentrated liquidity, you have less capital required to have more efficient swaps. So hopefully, concentrated liquidity on Osmosis will continue to grow. Maybe we can get a fee reduction. I would love to see ST Atom at a 0.01% fee tier. I think that would be great for the entire ecosystem. Hopefully that can get incentivized so we can get really deep liquidity there. I would love for Quasar to make a vault that helps tick optimize for that specific pair. That would be phenomenal. also, just getting deeper liquidity in things like UMI. I'm a huge fan of UMI. Being able to leverage ST Atom, 3.3x is phenomenal because then you have a 20% staking yield leveraged 3.3 times, so that's like 65% on your long there. But of course, you're shorting Atom for that at like 9% interest rate. The strategy overall ends up getting 35 to 45% on Atom with the Delta 1 exposure. That's phenomenal. You might be able to do a little bit better on Levana, but I'll pass it to you. So I guess we need efficient swaps and deep money markets.
So no official comment about the ST Atom or the backtesting there, but there's I think you smell what's cooking in the oven. So I think that we're at the stage, we all recognize, we're all here because we believe that this isn't the end of crypto. This has been the longest bear market. Maybe our wives or significant others have given up hopes. Maybe our children are like, what, do you still work for Bitcoin? And questions like that. And your mom is like, sending you articles about Sam and, things like that. But we're still here because we believe that number goes up. Ultimately, that's what it comes down to. That what we're building has intrinsic value. That there's going to be a global shift, and that the intrinsic value of permissionless, open, transparent, interoperable money systems that aren't controlled by any specific nation state, but rather can be accessed on a global landscape, will become not just flourish, but will eventually become the preferred means of international commerce. And as long as you believe in that, then that's where we have to put the focus of building during the bear market. And I believe that the largest adoption is going to come through the infrastructure, is going to come beyond the infrastructure phase, where the tribalism that we've seen historically within crypto is a driving price factor. I don't believe that we've seen in many ecosystems, where projects within Binance Smart Chain will move together. Projects within Cosmos will move together, or Base we've seen recently on a run, and no shortage of Ethereum layer 2s. But when we're really at, let's call it late stage infrastructure, then it's not CompuServe versus AOL, and I don't know if anyone who's listening has any idea what that means, but it really will become that I just go to a website and it works, and I use my single sign-on, and I think that that's what we're seeing with MetaMask Snaps. I think that what we're seeing with Sunny's speech about the multifaceted authentication and the Web 2 kind of flavor of your using your X account or Twitter account or Google account. I think that those are the areas of innovation where I think that there can be really, because of the flexibility of Cosmos, because of the flexibility of IBC, we can actually challenge ourselves to be a leader from a UX perspective, and then that can create the advantage rather than being fast followers in terms of copying GMX or copying other applications within outside of the Cosmos ecosystem.
Yeah, so I mean, fixing the pain in the user interface is one part, but the other half is obviously the applications that is going to excite also people who are maybe non-crypto native yet. And I can very much relate to what you said at the beginning, that my grandparents, for example, they still regularly send me print out articles about the current SBF trial, and how maybe Coinbase and Binance are also going to crumble and whatever. And my dad is sending me job postings about some financial crime audit firms and suggesting me, yeah, maybe you should move to the other side of all of this. So yeah, what is going to get these people excited? Which applications, which use cases? I mean, even if the UI is at a stage that, okay, it's going to be usable for someone who, let's say, is like in his or her mid-50s. And maybe is one of these applications going to be built on Cosmos?
Mid-50s, I don't know. I know a lot of people were onboarded in DeFi in like 2017 and then 2019 due to hype cycles, right? Things that get people interested. Generally, we're targeting like your young adults, primarily young male adults, who are interested tacitly in investing, right? So they might get into stocks like, I think the GameStop craze got a lot of people into crypto. Elon Musk with his Dogecoin got a lot of people back into crypto. So there are these really fringe, not super complex or nuanced hype cycles that drive markets that are not super huge, right? They're great for retail, but if you're trying to drive institutional investors into DeFi, into IBC, then you need like the killer app, which I don't know what that's going to be. I deal in the realm of DeFi at the retail level, and what interests people at that level are risk-adjusted yields. So how do we get those? I think with perp dexes, with counterparty vaults that give you delta 1 exposure to assets, with deep money markets that allow you to borrow to adjust your delta however you want, with a bunch of different applications with semi-reasonable liquidity where you can do fun stuff for interesting yields with the narratives that you have in your head. So we're starting to see that a lot more. I still think that the money markets in IBC need a lot more depth. I think that what Levana is doing is providing one of the most interesting things that I've seen in DeFi, and I'm not just saying that to blow smoke up your butt.
You've complimented me like 10 times,
Yeah.
and I'll take it all.
Okay, and then yeah, so I'll start insulting you now so we get the balance. But generally and genuinely having single-side exposure to an asset is what most people want. They want to not deal with severe and permanent loss. They want to say, I like this asset. How do I make this asset grow? And we're starting to see that in IBC, and I think that'll be great tailwinds. So institutional adoption, no idea. Ask these two guys. But retail investment, give us yields and let us pick our exposure.
I think that's spot on. I think a bull market is what brings everybody back, right? And I think a bull market is what's like, everyone right now is just wanting BTC and ETH. And once everybody gets excited and everything goes up, number goes up, then they're immediately going to start exploring other ecosystems again, and they're going to get bored with BTC and ETH. Because in crypto, like, the narrative is the capital is always going to rotate from BTC and ETH down to other alts. And so I think that that's all we need. But the beauty with IBC and Cosmos is sort of like the Jack Zamplin perspective, which I love, is the tech is going to get so good that we're going to abstract all of these chains out of the user's experience anyway, and that you're just going to have like a beautiful either application or Web 2 front end that's going to be able to do anything you want, and then IBC is going to route all of that in the background and will be abstracted away from the users anyway. And I think that's how that we'll get the institution and mass adoption. But I think that comes after another bull market.
Very much agree with that perspective. I think after all, it's, it starts and ends with the memetics about it. If you don't get people to identify with the greed, with the hype, with the memes about it, I don't think, you're going to get them excited. I mean, I think that cycle is just going to continue as it always has been in history. And I mean, of course, the means back then have been different, but in the end, it's pretty much it rhymes,
Well, there's only two things that really motivate anybody, fear and greed. And traditionally, fear is associated with bear markets, people exiting what's viewed as, high risk or risk on assets, crypto, FANG stock, Pokemon cards, whatever it is that they might be collecting. And, greed is when they will make, arguably irrational decisions to just FOMO in at, some high leverage, or, to have grandma sell her, her pension fund and mortgage the house in order to buy that Bitcoin and go on a road trip. I'm sure we've all read those news articles from 2017, and I think that what we'll have to see is something shift in the perception amongst the general population, that the aspect of fear actually draws people into crypto. That the fear of your savings not being able to maintain their value because of high inflation rates, that you live in a country where you are afraid to have your life savings in a bank, and so you must flee. I mean, we're here in Turkey, and I've spoken to many people that trust Bitcoin more than they trust their local bank. And so I think that as we see a mental shift of where fear becomes something that brings you farther away from crypto to fear brings you something closer to crypto, then it's inevitable that crypto will be successful.
Stephen, I saw you raise an eyebrow when Jonathan mentioned that the only things that people motivate are fear and greed. Maybe given your philosophy background that not everybody in DeFi knows about, do you have any comment on that? Is there anything else that motivates people in crypto, especially beyond fear and greed?
I would say that DeFi specifically has collected and accumulated some of the most interesting minds that I have ever encountered. So maybe there's a sticking power of individuals that's motivated by curiosity, but I would say the curiosity is probably also somehow rooted in fear or greed or some sort of desire to consume, accomplish, whatever it might be. So, no, I think he's more or less spot on.
All right, so fear, greed, and power it is.
Perhaps.
All right, then maybe moving over towards some precise strategies. What are some, yield opportunities that currently excite you in the broader Cosmos ecosystem?
Okay.
Because we got to let some alpha drip here.
Go short INJ on injective. If you long INJ spot and then short it at 1x leverage, you're effectively getting 150 to 200% APR on what he will lovingly tell you is cash and carry trade. So cash and carry, super cool strategy. The place to do it's definitely Levana right now. Injective used to have some great cash and carry trades, but nothing compares to what's going on over there. The other thing that I am super excited about is QAtom. So QAtom is not redeemable right now, but if you guys know QAtom, it's Quicksilver's staked version of Atom. I love Quicksilver's infrastructure. I love their tech. I love their ethos. I don't love that you can't unstake right now, but I do love that that's created a really, really interesting opportunity on QAtom, which is, so the QAtom backing value is 1.11 Atom, but it's at 1 Atom. So effectively you can get 1 QAtom per Atom, which means if you...
To purchase, not mint.
To purchase, exactly, yeah. So let's just say you take some Atom over to Osmosis and you buy some QAtom. If you held that until redemption, then you would make an 11% arbitrage trade plus any of the intrinsic value gain you get from it being staked. So let's just say in 3 months, QAtom opens up redemption and people arbitrage the price back to parity. That would mean the value of holding that would be roughly 60% APR, just for buying and holding QAtom.
So is it sure that it's going to be redeemable in 3 months, just
No,
so people can
you
roughly estimate the
exactly.
APR?
You have to have some sort of prediction, some sort of estimate, some sort of guess. Now, there are many things that can drive QAtom back to parity. It could just be news, right? Quicksilver says, okay, we have a timeline, we have a specific date where we think it's going to, it could be even half a year from now, but what will happen is people will begin to arbitrage this, especially because they see this as a sort of like risk-free trade. What you can do is you can borrow Atom, you can short Atom, you can short your delta, and then just have this as a sort of neutral trade where you're getting free Atom over the long term. But here's where it gets even more interesting. You can leverage this if you wanted to on UMI as an example. So provide some, buy your QAtom, which is 13% under peg right now, provide it as collateral on UMI, borrow more Atom, convert that to more QAtom, and leverage this up to around 2.2 is the max leverage there. I wouldn't necessarily do max leverage in case QAtom goes even lower. But then not only are you getting that 60% intrinsic yield, assuming a 3% parity, but you're getting that leverage 2.2x. So I love that strategy. I think that's super interesting. Then, of course, the Quasar vaults, which are doing range management on, or range optimization on concentrated liquidity pairs, especially like USDT, USDC, which is highly incentivized right now. And the more tight your range is, the more you're getting in those incentives. So you're getting really, really fascinating yields over there. I'm super excited about the Noble USDC, USDT pair because the Axelar USDT, USDC pair was getting 40% average APR in this stable pair. Probably going to get the same on that when Noble USDC comes out. Which is all to say, I do think there are some fascinating strategies right now in IBC. Yeah.
Yeah, these are the similar strategies that I'm most interested in IBC as well, right? Have become a Levana maxi, and I know you have as well, Stephen. And so, what I'm mostly interested in seeing develop is privacy built into DeFi, and so I'm really excited about what Pembra and Shade are working on, and I just don't think they're that hasn't been built up enough yet, and there's not sufficient liquidity to make it like really interesting. But like I'm really interested in privacy as a service from chains and how that develops in the future.
So I think the real strategies are going to be very personally driven. Whether or not you want a strategy to be able to just generally outperform a directional view on the market, or whether you want strategies that focus around being delta neutral, where you want to be able to earn essentially more US dollar equivalent versus more crypto denominated equivalent. So for myself, I have a very bullish long-term view on Bitcoin. And so I'm always trying to think of ways that I can just, passively or low risk get more Bitcoin. And that is, a lot of that philosophy, resulted in some of the product vision and implementation, like what you mentioned of, you called them a beautiful term. I've never heard of that before, of the LP and XLP positions.
CPVs?
Yeah, CPVs. Yeah, so I think that's, we'll probably add that to the docs now. That's, I like that term. But the idea here is that even if you wanted to be able to earn these APRs, because of the fact that there are lending markets like Mars or UMI, you essentially can just start out by shorting the asset, borrowing against a stablecoin, and then you might pay a low single-digit APR, and then you take that and you deposit it into Levana, and then earn like literally 4 to 10 times the amount of APR, depending upon how degen the general market is. And you're essentially not really exposed to the underlying asset. Now, obviously, I'm oversimplifying what the risks are. There's all kinds of platform risk associated with it. There's, there's trader success risks. But in general, what we've seen, and we're very transparent about this, is that traders tend to lose more than they win. My father has a great phrase. He says, if you ever walk into a casino, look at the quality of the carpet on the floor, and then look up at the trader, at the players, because it's the players that paid for that carpet. People just have a general fallacy about risk, and they don't realize, how to hedge properly. And then speaking of that, I think that hedging, Levana and just perps in general is usually thought of as a risk-on service. That if I own Atom, I own Bitcoin, I have a certain market risk there, I want to increase my market risk-reward profile, so then I come to a product like Levana. But actually what you've shown with most of your writing is that Levana can be used to decrease the amount of risk while actually increasing the reward on spot holding assets. So I challenge people to learn from this guy.
Yeah, I was going to say there's another strategy you could do where, like right now, if you're shorting Atom on Levana, it's 23% APR to short, right? So 1x leverage, shorting Atom, 23%. If you want to then long Atom as well, in like an ST Atom pool, you're getting, I think the APR ends up being something around 30% because you're getting 10% intrinsic yield from the ST Atom portion of that LP, and then another 20% from the LP itself. So 30% on your long, 23% on your short. You average those two if you're 1x leverage. You could easily go 2x leverage, I think, on Atom and not really risk liquidation, which puts 40% on your short. Your overall strategy ends up being something between like 19% and 27% at 1x leverage, and it's delta neutral. So again, it's roughly fiat denominated. So it's risk reduction, and it's a fun strategy to do. I do think that anyone who wants to start playing with delta, like whether they want to be delta neutral, delta 1, delta negative, should incorporate some sort of perpetuals into their like daily appetite and diet in DeFi, even with a small amount, just to get used to it, because once you can manipulate your delta, you can decide how to express yourself and express your narratives in your investments.
And I think it's the opportunity and really responsibility from a UI UX perspective of Levana and Levana's partners, like Quasar and Som, is to be able to provide very simplified user experiences that may not have all of the nuance of doing this by hand, but I mean, at this point, we all drive, automatic cars or, we said, semi-AI assisted cars, and you really only drive manual, for, kicks. So I think
alive.
that, yeah, exactly, to feel alive. But so I think that we're going to see the real adoption of these strategies when it's just set it and forget it.
Maybe circling back to the notion of risk that you mentioned, to bring it back to a little bit of a broader perspective. All of your crypto dabblings and, experience, has that had any influence on risk management in your life generally? Or were you
Awful.
able to
Absolutely
extract
awful.
any useful lessons, not only awful ones? Or if there are awful ones, feel free to share those.
I feel like my risk tolerance is like so out of whack right now. I look at like we've got our life insurance. They've got these guys that they send to you, where they're supposed to manage like your pension fund and this and that, and I'm like looking at that yield, and I'm like, wait a minute, if I die, that's all my family gets? Like, how do we 10x that? Like, how do yeah, and he's like, yeah, exactly.
Can we loop our life insurance?
Yeah, exactly. I feel like it's almost like when you eat too much spicy food and then you can't go anywhere without a bottle of Tabasco. So I feel like that's what DeFi has done to me.
I will agree with that. I look at everything as collateral now. Like every asset that I own, like if I can borrow against this, could I reinvest it in some sort of interesting way so I can get yield on this? I know a guy who was getting paid to live in his house because he bought when interest rates were low, and then when interest rates were rising, he got T-bills, and so now effectively every month he's getting paid through treasuries to live where he is. You look at everything through the lens of investment and opportunity cost, and I think that's been like the major benefit from being in DeFi so long. But then like the detriment is you look at everything through an investment and opportunity cost lens rather than just like seeing reality in a nice sort of normal, normie way. Human. Right. Everything is like numbers now, but it's been incredibly fascinating to have this sort of psychological change in my life.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true for me. My risk tolerance within crypto has been like so large and so crazy. And then throughout the last year, joining the DeFi Dojo and learning how to like delta neutral everything and like remove some of the risk while still earning high yield, I think is like the most exciting thing in DeFi. But it's absolutely translated to like every other thing in life. I'm thinking about like building Airbnbs or buying rental houses or whatever, and then like I'm matching that yield up against like what I'm getting in DeFi, and that's how I'm thinking about things.
Well, I mean, to appreciate the beauty of life, you got to risk it once in a while. So I think it doesn't only come with bad sides. I think especially the aspect that you think more in opportunity cost than maybe in expected value terms can really help you to avoid a lot of logic mistakes that many other people make in their everyday lives. But I think the major downside is that sometimes you sort of forget about the sort of poetic aspect of reality. And yeah.
For you, I appreciate my wife more. Because when she...
Can you collateralize her?
That's right. Yeah, that's right. When she met me, I was broke and small and like, I don't know, like degen. So she bought me when I was a shitcoin, effectively. And so like my value has grown dramatically, and she took an investment. She's a great trader, I guess. Hopefully she doesn't flip me.
She has diamond hands.
That's right. She has diamond hands. Yeah, exactly. So I guess that's like one of the semi-poetic ways in which to interpret my experience in DeFi.
Great. I think that was some very useful life advice for those people listening, no matter their DeFi experience. Maybe to round it up, because we are unfortunately already at the end of this very exciting panel, but are there any really spicy takes you have on the current Cosmos DeFi landscape, some very unpopular opinions that could get you into some big trouble?
I don't want to be too spicy. There are some dexes.
You're in Turkey. There's spicy food, so your take's got to be spicy too.
There are some dexes that may or may not be very large that do not have great swap efficiency in spite of their deep liquidity that are trying to put even more fees on their swaps, and that I just think they need to reconsider their direction so that more protocols can build on top of them, and so that more retail can go to them and have great swaps, so they can be competitive with EVM protocols like Uniswap or even SushiSwap, for goodness sakes. And I would really consider that sometimes returning all the value back to stakers is not as important as making sure that users of the protocol are having a painless experience. So that's about as spicy as I'll get. I don't want to call out anyone specifically, even though I might have incidentally.
But I mean, well, you also provided some advice how to do it better, so I think that makes it good.
I think that we haven't, since the collapse of the largest Cosmos chain, we have not gained any users. And the users that have remained are on that like meme bell curve of like the dunce and the Jedi. We've just remained the guys in the middle that have relatively low risk tolerance, and they want to just set it and forget it. And we need to either make a choice of one of two things. We need to either hide the fact that we are Cosmos and then join the ETH L2 ecosystem so that people can just be on, all of this MetaMask whole party that's happening, or might be happening, someday will happen, speedily in our days, and then just kind of reposition ourselves as like the better ETH layer 2, and that's one option. Or we need to do some soul searching and to kind of figure out how do we mature to those two orders of standard deviations of like the one guy who's like YOLOing 30x or 100x leverage, and the other guy that's doing all these complicated delta neutral strategies.
I'm personally offended by the bell curve comment. I think I don't have a spicy take. I've been watching the Cosmos ecosystem develop since 2018, 2019, paid attention really closely, and I think 90% of the problems that we're seeing right now are bear market problems. I think the Luna thing was just massive. But I think at the end of the day, all I see is all of the pieces for Cosmos coming together at the right time, right before the next bull market. And I also love all the like crazy experiments that are happening, right? And 90% of them won't work, and we'll learn a lot along the way.
That's your spicy take.
That's my spicy take, is like keep building, keep trying stuff, keep experimenting, and don't let the people on Twitter keep you from doing that.
I think that take was as spicy as a kebab in Germany if you order it spicy. But it was a good take nevertheless, so don't worry about it. I think that was a great first panel to start this day. Some very useful insights. I mean, definitely go check our timestamps and go back to these strategies that Steven mentioned and try it out yourself. There are, as he said, some very juicy yields in Cosmos right now. So yeah, are there any last comments? Where can people follow up with you? Where can people argue with you on Twitter if they disagree with your takes?
Rabby is a better wallet than MetaMask. I said it.
That is true.
It's
That
so
is
much better.
absolutely true.
You can
Facts.
find me, my original Twitter got hacked, and I haven't been able to get it back. There's like no customer service on Twitter, unfortunately. I will never call it X. So follow me at @thecalcguy. That's my new Twitter. You can also find me at the DeFi Dojo Discord. Links are probably on my Twitter, or at least they should be. If they're not, just like DM me and I'll give them to you. Also, my YouTube is The Calculator Guy. You can find me there. I talk about strategies. I've done a video on Levana. So if you want to learn like how to use Levana, you can watch that video. I've also done a bunch of videos in like IBC and EVM land. That's where you would find me.
Can definitely recommend to join the dojo. Best DeFi Discord out there. Great community calls, great AMAs.
Come try Levana. DMs are open. I know on X, I know, right? Yeah, it's spicy. It's kind of hard to DM people nowadays. So you can always just the Levana _protocol. We try to answer everybody and we're always willing to hop on a call. We've done over 200 interviews with the users of the platform in the past 9 weeks, which is, when you actually look at a calendar of what that looks like, it's like phenomenal and intimidating. And so we would love to talk to you. We'd love to walk you through the onboarding. We'd love to get your feedback, and we'd love to implement your great ideas. So please reach out.
Oh yeah, do you want people to?
Well, my Twitter is anonymous, and we won't go there. But I would say follow along with the DeFi Dojo Validation, and feel free to stake with us and support us and follow us on Twitter in that way. Our goal, like, we really look at validating as a public good, and so we're validating on chains that we think that we can add a literal real value to, and we won't be validating on chains that we don't think we can. So yeah, it'd be cool to check out as well. Thanks so much, man. It's been awesome.
All right. Thank you guys for joining. It was an amazing panel, and yeah, enjoy Cosmoverse and see you around.